I'm here with Sonia Cuff from Microsoft, a cloud advocate.
So as a cloud advocate, I also talk to people that are using Active Directory on premises, and they might be connecting up to our cloud, sort of that hybrid model. It's really underpinning our new modern workloads in the cloud. So let's talk about how you monitor it and maintain it and make sure that the right people have got the right access to the right information at the right time.
So I was thinking about Active Directory the other day, as I often do.
Of course.
Yes. And I was considering how when they initially introduced Active Directory, it really had a different intent, I think, than what it's being used for today.
Yeah, well, I remember a world without Active Directory. When I started in IT, I was provisioning users in Novell NetWare. So that was how you got access to the data. We stored the data on a Novell server, and you needed a username and password to log into the system, and that was pretty much all Identity did. Active Directory came out to underpin access to all of the different Microsoft products and services. So with Windows Server, now it was access to Exchange, to SharePoint, to files and folders. And so it really underpinned access to all of those different things for somebody.
Right, right. And now, it's not just the people that are sitting in your building anymore either. It's a lot of other folks that need that access as well.
Yeah, and it was so much easier when folks were sitting in the building. Security consisted of you having to badge into the corporate office, sit down at a corporate PC and log in with those credentials to get access to that company information. We even used to block the USB ports, so you couldn't copy files onto a USB disk and take it out of the office. And so everything was really nicely contained and security was so much easier. And now, not only do people want to be able to access corporate information from outside the office, they want to access it from any device that they use that has access to the internet. And now we're opening up the world to share and collaborate with our partners, our suppliers and our customers to really work collaboratively together when we're not in the same location. And that has a lot of productivity benefits and a lot of security concerns too.
Yeah, I know there's definitely trade-offs.
So let's talk about what that looks like for a systems administrator these days. Now they're not just concerned about making sure that the user accounts match the people in their organization. They usually are now starting to use different cloud services. And so we need to make sure that we've got tools in place that make it easy for them to take that provisioning of a user to create them in the environment, but now also get access to these cloud resources and these cloud services as well. And as much as we like to say that everybody's going to go to the cloud and cloud all the things, that's not the reality for most organizations. There are legacy systems that will still stay on premises for a while until applications get upgraded. There are some workloads or some data that you still want to keep on-prem. And what we find is a lot of customers using this hybrid model. So they still very much are relying on their Active Directory on their servers to be that single point of truth for those new user accounts, and then synchronize that up to their cloud environments so that their users, doesn't matter where the data is stored or which systems they're using, they've got that seamless log-on experience and they're getting access to everything they need. It sounds really good from a user perspective, but guess what? Now we've got kind of two environments to manage. We've got this extra level of complexity here to make sure these two environments are talking to each other.
And I can imagine that just once you add more than one environment, things can get out of sync potentially.
Yeah, they can. Look, just as much as a complicated AD environment with multiple domain controllers can get out of sync, if you're not watching things like the replication, that replication between on-prem and the cloud can get out of sync as well. And so that's another thing that you've got to monitor and manage to make sure that it's working smoothly.
Yeah, so the user isn't going to try and log into one thing and not be able to log into it while a different application things are working.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Or if you think about the downside of that, if you've blocked access to a user from logging into AD on-prem, you really want to know that that access is also blocked in the cloud. So now they can't circumnavigate that by going, well, I'll just log in through the web browser instead to get access to the things I'm not supposed to be accessing.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
and it actually kind of dovetails into one of the other concerns is that Active Directory really has a lot of very valuable information that might be really appealing to a hacker, right? So, there's definitely some, security concerns in terms of, are there users hanging out in there that are no longer part of the company that somebody might compromise and an account takeover or something like that?
Yeah. And so one of the ways that we solve this is we have some Azure B2B, for example. So that's a great little component where I can give you in your other company access to my systems, but it's done through your own corporate directory. And what that means is that if you leave your company and I never know, as soon as you lose access to your company, it automatically takes away the access that you've got into my systems as well. So there's little complexities now that we're seeing because of how we're working. The other challenge is the easiest way to get access to information is to get somebody to hand over their login credentials, right?
Yes.
So we've seen social engineering, phishing attacks, where it's far easier for a hacker to convince you to log in and capture that login information than it is for them to try and mount any attacks on our Azure Active Directory systems and try and get in that way.
Right.
And so we have some security things that you need to be looking out for in terms of how many logins are failing for this user. Does it look like this user account has logged in Sydney, Australia, and then 20 minutes later it's logged in from the United States? Like, it's not physically possible to travel from those two locations in 20 minutes. So there's obviously something wrong going on here. And the thing is that these systems will tell you that usually under the covers, but if you don't have your monitoring and your alerting set up properly to detect and alert that stuff's happening, then you'll just never know that you've got a potential attack on your system.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. So you're kind of looking just for behaviors that don't make sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And then I think in addition to that, obviously, the security of your data, your infrastructure is really important. But, because it's the underpinning of how everybody gets access to everything and can have such a dramatic impact on their productivity, I think obviously the health and welfare of your Active Directory infrastructure is important too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the trickiest things that makes us slightly different from any other application. And so if we're talking about a software application, we can usually put it in a test environment, run through what that upgrade and deployment might be like, back it out if it failed. Like, we've got all of this sort of pre-testing. It's not as easy to do that with Active Directory. When you go and upgrade servers and you upgrade AD components, you're doing that in production. You can simulate in a test lab as much as you like, but as soon as you hit the button into production, if it breaks, then the phone calls start, right? So then people can't log in, and then you're scrambling to go, okay. Rolling back changes to Active Directory is not quite as easy as potentially rolling back changes to any of the other applications.
So bottom line, you just need to be paying more attention.
Yeah, absolutely, on a couple of levels. And so as sysadmins, we naturally want to put our attention to, is the system working? Are the metrics good? Like, all of those sort of tangible things we look at. But it's also about making sure that organisationally you have the right processes in place for making sure that that security is being kept up to date. So group membership, for example, are people still in groups that they shouldn't be? And it's kind of not a problem from a sysadmin perspective, because you're like, if I've got people in a group, it's not going to slow my system down, right? But what it means is that people have access to stuff that they shouldn't have access to anymore. And then we start to get into the realm of security breaches, which aren't so much a breach, but they're because permissions have been configured or people have got access to things that they really shouldn't have.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. Well, let me show you some ways some of our customers are managing this. So as we talked about, normally Active Directory is something that's kind of working in the background. You don't need to worry about it. So the systems admins often aren't kind of in the system checking things on a daily basis. But once there is a problem, it can be really helpful to have some place to start to figure out what to do when you're troubleshooting.
Sure.
So this is our server application monitor product. So what we're looking at is our App Insight for Active Directory. And what that is just we've taken, for some critical applications, what we've done is looked into what are the things you should be watching, maybe get some third-party recommendations on both monitors and thresholds. And that's what we've done here for Active Directory. So what you see up here on the right side is our app stack. Active Directory isn't something alone, right? It's something that's connected to a lot of other things. So if it's not a problem with Active Directory, maybe it's a problem with something it's connected to, which you'd see up here in the application side. Maybe it's a problem with the server that it's sitting on, which you can drill into from here, or really any of the other components that kind of connect for that infrastructure.
I love that. Look, that's a basic part of troubleshooting 101, right? Let's find out exactly where the problem is. I mean, it's usually DNS, but this gives you a great little picture of all those different layers that actually make up that service we're trying to analyze.
Yeah, and we talked about replication a little bit earlier. We have this widget right here, which can kind of pinpoint, are there replication errors happening between different Active Directory instances? And then I know we haven't really gone into roles, but as you can imagine, if one of your Active Directory instances goes down and it happens to be, which this is not best practice, the system with all of the roles on it, that could be a problem. So you need to know what roles you need to move onto different instances, and you can understand where you need to start from here. Okay. And then of course, we look for a lot of specific Active Directory related events and watch those over time. Let's go down here and see one where there's actually something going on here. This is a logon event to a node, and what we're seeing is an account failed to log on. And in and of itself, that might not be something you'd want to be, alerted on, but, if there's something like this where it happened 180 times and in a very short period of time, that's probably something you're going to want to get flagged on.
So this kind of takes the fun out of how we used to manage things, right? We used to go into Event Viewer and sort or filter for that one event ID and see these screeds and screeds of events. But this is a much prettier and easier way to look at event log stuff.
Right. The hope is that this kind of surfaces what's going on, so you'll cut a lot of that time where you're trying to connect the dots yourself. Yeah. Okay, so we talked a little bit about kind of performance and health of Active Directory, and now we're moving a little bit more towards like the insides, the permissions and the security. Sure. So now we're shifting over to our Access Rights Manager product. And as you can see, a couple of things it does is it goes out and looks at the permissions that are currently in your Active Directory system and tries to identify areas of risk. It can alert you on kind of suspicious behavior, like things like inactive users logging into things they shouldn't be. And then it also gives a lot of really deep reporting that you can then kind of turn over and handle for auditing purposes. So let's start there. We're going to go in to see who has access where. And in this case, we usually like to pick on marketing. And we will see on the file server who has access to that marketing folder. And in this case, what we'll do is we'll look specifically at the group structure. And there's a couple of different ways you can do these reports. You can export it to an Excel file, you can download it to a PDF, which obviously makes it really easy to send over to anybody, a group owner who might want to do a little bit of analysis, are these the right folks, or an auditor. So here we'll show the report.
That's great because we're trying to avoid this kind of sprawl that happens. We set up group memberships and permissions on files and folders just the way we want them until somebody else comes along and adds somebody else to the group or gives them access to the file directly. And then it kind of doesn't matter so much what Active Directory is saying. If someone's added them directly into the permissions for a file, for example, group membership kind of goes out the window, but it's great to be able to have something like this that can surface those details up a lot easier. And like you said, being able to actually show compliance.
Yeah, and so you'll see, here are the groups that are in that marketing, and then here are the people that are a member of those groups, and then here's the type of access that they have. Great. So easy to export, easy to send on and verify, or just send to your auditor. So that's one cool thing. Another cool thing that our customers really love about this is there's this nice visual way to represent those groups. And in this case, we're going to pick on sales. But as you can see, what it's done is you have this overall sales organization that has an awful lot of members in it, of course, but then obviously we have sub-teams. So our Sales Africa, these are the members of that group. and they roll up into the overall sales organization.
Okay, that's a little prettier than an Active Directory tree structure, right?
Exactly. Similarly, you can grab this image, you can send it on. It makes it a lot easier to just kind of understand how things are organized. And now let's move over to the dashboard. So this is where, we tell kind of those administrators, if you're kind of wondering to know what's going on in the environment, are there any problem areas I need to delve into a little bit more? This is where you can go. And so you see we flagged a couple of things, like there's some empty groups, why do they exist? Maybe you want to look into that. Groups and recursion, obviously, that's an easy way to accidentally give someone access to things they shouldn't have access to. But then, of course, we'll look at something a little simpler like users that have been disabled. So in this case, we don't have a lot in this particular system, but one of the cool things you can do is actually go in and take actions if you need to. So in this case, I don't think that this needs to be an active user, or maybe we can go ahead and either activate that account or we can soft delete it if we don't think it needs to be in there anymore. So another thing our customers find really helpful is this logging capability. So behind the scenes, we're watching for all the changes that have been made to Active Directory and then recording them, and not just saying what changed, but also having the ability to add a comment about why that's changed.
Right.
And you can imagine how that can be important 3 years from now when you're wondering, why do you have access to that?
So just how far back can I go with these logs?
We really recommend as far back as possible, because you'd be surprised how many times you need to look back several years to understand why you did something you did. So one more thing, if you're part of the governance team especially, is the risk dashboard. So this is the risk analysis dashboard, and what happens generally when somebody implements ARM is they do a scan, and then what we'll do is some analysis to see if there are any problem areas about the way things are configured right now. And as you can see in this case, there are. But the good news is you can actually go ahead and present this in a way that's really down to earth and consumable for somebody who's not technical. And so what most people do is they'll go through, they'll do some, digging into each of these specific areas, they'll make some changes, and then they can run it again and see if they've made improvements.
Green is good, red is bad, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's how some of our customers are handling watching the performance and security of their Active Directory.
Yeah, so Active Directory is used by a huge amount of our customers. They've got that legacy of using it for so many years, but it's even more important now to make sure that these practices and tools help underpin this new modern way of working and access to all these other systems in the cloud.
Yeah, I don't think you can get away from Active Directory.
Sorry, no, you can't.